Hi, welcome to Music for the Soul podcast, where we talk honestly about difficult things. This is a place where music, hope, and healing come together. I'm Becky Nordquist.
And I'm Steve Seiler. We are excited to have with us David Davidson. If you've listened to any Music for the Soul music, you have heard the work of this man. I can guarantee it. He has been a partner with this ministry through the violin and through pulling together orchestras and quartets for us for, going on 20 years. David, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here. And 20 years, that's daunting.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't look in the mirror or anything. Yeah.
Well, we are so glad that you are with us today. And certainly we are grateful for your contribution to so many of the Music for the Soul projects. And I'm just going to start right out of the gates with, how did you first become interested in the violin?
Well, I come from a musical family. My mom was a musician, and I started piano when I was 5. And my mom and her best friend, who was a violinist, she said, well, let's start a string program in Winter Haven, Florida. And I have 4 children, and they're going to be our first victims. So that's exactly what happened. And my mom's name was Virginia Davidson, and Virginia and Helen started a string program and produced an enormous amount of good players for 35,000 community members in Winter Haven, Florida. Back in 1960s, I was born in 53, so they did an amazing thing.
I know Winter Haven as a place where some professional baseball team does its exhibition season, but I can't remember which one it is. So, apropos of nothing.
Of course, baseball has to come into play here. Oh,
sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. I'm a baseball fan. Go Tigers. So you grew up kind of playing. Were you glad about being the guinea pig, or were you kind of excited about it?
Well, I really took to the violin quickly because I don't know. I just enjoyed it right off the bat. It felt good. There's something tactical about it. It feels good on your hands. And I remember the very first thing I did was come up with some kind of a country fiddle thing. As soon as they got the bow straightened out in my hand and held it, this was the first day. When I picked the violin, I had a choice, either violin, viola, or cello. So I picked the violin. My twin brother picked cello.
That is so cool. Did you guys play together?
Yeah, we did. What happened after about 4 years, my mom had us start playing in church, and she loved Bach. I loved Bach. So we played probably about 50 different cantatas over a 20-year period of being part of the string group, which actually ended up being the same group used in a Bach festival that she started in Central Florida, which is still going on today.
Wow.
That is so cool. I just love how it's lived on over the years. And so did you end up going to school for music then?
Yes. The interesting part is in high school, no one knew I played the violin. So in high school, I joined the concert choir and I picked up the guitar. Actually, I picked up the guitar when I was 13. And by high school, I had a band. And I still played the violin for my mom, but no one knew I played the violin. And my vision was I was going to be a rock star.
Yeah, because violin's not cool. I mean, if you're looking to pick up girls, the violin's not going to get you there, right?
In fact, I picked up my current wife. So
I was going to say, I don't know.
So Karen, who's my wife, she, we met in concert choir, and I was a guitar player, and we played and sang together. What happened was, and I worked in a music store, and I was a guitar tech in the music store and sold guitars and amps and stuff like that. And that was my major high school experience because I wasn't much of an academic, but working in the music store, and my high school gave me a grade and credit for working every day. So
right.
I went to high school and went to work. And so what happened is the reason I ended up in college was that my mom had to finish her doctorate at Florida State University. And she was the first woman graduate of a music doctorate at Florida State. And this was in 1972. She had to spend a whole year there. And so I went with her. My boss at the music store said that I couldn't work there anymore. I had to get at least a 2-year degree from somewhere. And so I followed my mom to help her with my two younger siblings while she attended classes. And then I enrolled in the junior college in Tallahassee. And then I was walking through the music school looking for my mom to get some money because I didn't have any money to take the kids to get something to eat. And I heard my name called, and it was a man named Richard Bergen. Richard Bergen was concertmaster of the Boston Symphony for 42 years and had just been given the position of head of the string department at Florida State. It was sort of his version of a retirement. Anyway, he and his wife, Ruth Basselt, who was a very famous violinist also, took over the string department. And he saw me, and I had played the Bach double violin concerto with him when I went to a music camp at age 14. And he remembered me.
Wow.
So, yeah, really crazy. Now, the obvious background story here is this: my mom must have fixed this up.
No, moms don't do things like that.
But he told me to come to room 142 the next day at 2:00. And I said, sure, because I was able to do it. I didn't know why exactly. And so I showed up, and the entire performance faculty was there. And he said, where's my violin? And I said, I didn't know I was supposed to bring my violin. The truth being, I didn't even have one in Tallahassee. And so he gave me his violin, and I played the first page of a Chrysler piece that I had sort of studied, and I got a scholarship. So that would never happen these days. I'm just saying that anybody listening to this, it's much harder to get that kind of good fortune these days. And I was extremely fortunate for a lot of reasons. Who knows, but that's what happened. I was around a lot of other violinists, and they were really great. And I still liked playing, and that's how I ended up being a violinist instead of a guitar player professionally. I mean, in Nashville, you don't tell anyone you're a guitar player, right?
Well, I love that what I hear is that you loved music, period.
Oh, yeah.
And that God was able to orchestrate the path to put you, onto the violin professionally. Once you realized you wanted to play the violin professionally, did that change the way you practiced?
Well, yes. What happened was I realized, I was from Winter Haven, Florida, and of course, Tampa was the biggest city near us. And we did go to Tampa occasionally to get a lesson here and there from the local big talent. But this was the first time I was immersed, around lots of good young players and a really good orchestra. The orchestra there is very good. And so I got inspired, and my teacher, who was Ruth Basselt, who is Richard Bergen's wife, recognized that I had a talent, and she really invested a lot of time in it. For a couple of years, I moved really fast, and I practiced 6-7 hours a day minimum. The other thing is I was the violinist that would play the new pieces. I love playing the new pieces, so I made myself available. Let me just put it that way. So by the time my junior year rolled around, I was playing in the two other orchestras outside of Tallahassee.
Well, now, I want to ask about this because one of the things that has always astonished me about you and the Nashville players, honestly, in general, is the level of reading skill that you come in and we put something in front of you that you've never seen before. And within 30 minutes, we have a finished take that sounds like you own it with your heart and soul. Do you feel like that came from the time you're sharing about now, playing in all those orchestras, going to school? Where did that come from?
The orchestras. Absolutely. I mean, unfortunately, the university and even the conservatory system does not put you through the amount of notes you have to play perfectly as a professional. Even a modern, like the Nashville Symphony players, have to learn at least 3 or 4 good books. What I mean is a program, a month. You don't get, a semester or whatever to learn the concert of the year. So sight reading, and I was always a good sight reader. Even when I was younger, I was a good sight. So I think allowing myself to be available to whatever anybody wanted to do, musically, is what taught me most of what I use. And I have to say that my first teacher, Helen Edwards, was a stickler for position and intonation and tone. She didn't try to push us into a lot of difficult repertoire. She just wanted what we did play, we had to play beautifully. And that's carried on That was great. When I got to FSU and ended up there, my teacher there, Ruth Basselt, said she didn't have to change a single thing in my technique. That's major. And that was, I attribute totally to Helen Edwards. And she did a great job. And she had a wonderful heart too. And also, and I'm talking too much, I know, but I want to make this clear. We always had a happy experience playing. There was never any, like a lot of my colleagues will talk about how they were abused by their teachers. This literally never happened to me ever. I mean, I never felt like I was being treated badly or had negative things said to me. And I realized that was a real gift. So many players have had negative experiences from their education.
Yes, and I think you bring up a really valid point too. We have such a broad range of listeners that a lot of parents, when they're looking and seeking out educators for their kids for music, regardless of the instrument or if it's voice, it is so important that they get someone that is excellent in technique. Of course, I think a lot in reference to vocal education. There's so much that can go sideways if you get a bad teacher or someone who is not schooled in technique and so forth, and also the French horn. So it's like once you learn bad habits, it's really hard to undo them when you get to someone who is, like you said, a stickler for good technique and form. And so that just cements it for me. I've said that for years when people are like, "Are you teaching lessons anymore?" I'm like, "Nope, I'm not. I'm doing other things." But be careful who you pick because it's really, really important that you choose someone who is well versed in those two things so that you don't pick up bad habits and then have to undo everything and retrain. So that's awesome. And you're right. What is that with the whole mean teacher thing? That is a real thing.
You know what I'm hearing in this also is that she was an encourager. We watched Mary Poppins recently with our granddaughter, and Mary Poppins says, "I am kind, but I'm firm."
Mm.
So if she was a stickler, but but it was a happy environment, that's that kind but firm
Yes.
combination. And I would encourage parents who are thinking about having lessons for their kids to make sure that they have somebody whose spirit is to be an encourager and to lift their kids up, because there's so much stress out there in the world right now. The other thing that comes to mind is whenever I'm doing a session with a group like an orchestra, I think of all the people who have had a hand in that moment that are not physically present in the room. But what I'm hearing you say, David, is that every time you have played on a Music for the Soul record, Helen Edwards has had a hand in what is being created, even though she's never probably heard of us.
Well, she passed away quite a while ago, and so did my mom. And that would be, if I were to say anything about my education at that point in time, it was a blended family affair. It was Helen's kids, Virginia's kids, and kids of other, the neighborhood kids. And then it expanded from there, but there was a geographical limitation to how it could expand because we weren't near any, now of course, Central Florida is Orlando, Tampa, and it's a huge area and they have lots of string programs in the schools and that. But at the time, this was it. What they were doing was it. I have to say, many times when I sit down to play, I think of where I come from and how did I get here? Because it does astonish me. The caliber of players I work with would be scary to me if I had any real sense of fear. Juilliard, Eastman, Royal Conservatory. Oh my gosh, the top abilities and the fact that they have chosen to do this kind of work and do with complete compassion and earnestness. There's no cynicism is simply not allowed. Every note you play is absolutely important. And the other thing that I love about, I want to call them my group. That's a little selfish, but because they work for everybody. But the group of players that I want there feel free to make a comment about a possible different interpretation or maybe a note that doesn't seem to land right where it ought to. And they're free to speak up with no consequence, even if they're wrong. And to me, that's a very, very big deal. It puts everybody at ease. And if I make a mistake, we just fix it. Or if one of them plays a wrong note, they just say, can we get bar 46? And it's just done.
I can say that's one of the things that impresses me so much when I work with you guys. They'll be playing along and it's all beautiful. And then they finish the take and somebody will say, hey, at bar 79, can I get the second note? And you're like, what?
Yeah. Well, we do have the luxury of being in the recording industry, which is the opportunity to fix right there on the spot.
Yeah. But
that's such a beautiful thing, right?
That self-correcting feature, though, is so great. It's just, that you care, that the musicians care enough to get it right and to give that performance. While we're talking about this, it comes to mind. Do you have any idea, David, how many Music for the Soul projects or songs you've played on?
A lot. I couldn't tell you the number. I have one favorite that was recently last year when I lost my mom. The song "I Miss You" came up. But no, do you know?
Yes,
know?
I do. Of course I do. I wouldn't ask a question like that if I couldn't answer it. You have played on 16 projects and on 36 songs in our catalog.
Wow. That's amazing.
And it's all glorious. I know it sounds like I'm just over the top throwing roses here, but I think the combination of Philip Kevrin as our string arranger and you and your team as our players is probably one of the most important secret weapons in our toolkit, because when we want to squeeze somebody's heart a little extra hard, make sure that they feel it deeply, so that they get the full value of the meaning of the song. That's when we pick up the phone and call you guys.
Well, I and I'm glad you mentioned Philip Kevrin, or PK like we call him. Gosh, just a perfect screenwriter. I can't say enough about it, And I do some arranging myself, and every time I play one of Philip's arrangements, it's a lesson.
Yes.
Well, to us, you are the dream team. So you and PK are just incredible at what you do. And so I just kind of want to go back. You were talking about some, kind of well-noted people that you've worked with and groups. I heard a little rumor that there was actually someone that might be pretty popular to people that are maybe not into orchestral music or classical music. I heard that you were on stage with a guy named Stevie Wonder one time.
Yeah, that was quite the night. What happened was, what was great about it is, as I was walking up to the stage, and this is absolute truth, they said I was leader of the string group, and they said, "Oh, by the way, Stevie's going to ask you to do a little something by yourself." And what I didn't understand was, most of the times that they'd ask that person, that player, to do something, they would get up and do some sort of excerpt from a classical piece, and then the band would sort of wrap themselves around that. But that's not what I thought. I thought, because I'd had quite a large amount of experience playing rock and blues violin, I thought, okay, I'm just supposed to take a ride and do 16 bars or something like that. So they had started in F sharp minor doing a groove, and I just started, say, okay, now and he introduced me, not by name, but now we're going to have, this guy play. And so I just started playing my deal, and everybody was sort of shocked, including my colleagues, because they had not really ever seen me do that, because there was never really an occasion by which they would see me do that. But I still have a blues that I work with regularly in North Florida, 4 or 5 times a year, I say. And it's my friend I grew up with who lives in Tallahassee, who has a 3-piece band that I guest act with on occasion. Still, to this day.
That's awesome. What was that? I mean, were you a little nervous, or what was that like? Was that really just?
No, heck, man, I was getting ready to play with one of the greatest rhythm sections in the world. To me, it was like, what could go wrong?
That's awesome.
Either it's going to be funny or interesting or whatever. Like they say, there's no such thing as bad publicity, right?
Right.
And I had the treat of being in the audience that night.
Okay, so you know what happened.
Yeah, and I'm like, wait a minute, I know that guy.
So I'm telling you the exact truth.
Yes, it's not a rumor, Becky. I can confirm that's an actual true story.
There's an eyewitness. So on that note, that was such a bad joke. What would you say that your favorite type of music to play is?
Well, if you're talking about a composer, which I'm a classical violinist, so we really have to talk about composer, it's
Mhm,
going to be Bach.
mhm,
That is my go-to. Like if I have an hour to practice,
mhm,
I practice the unaccompanied sonatas and partitas, and that's that. And of course, my scales and some intervals and basic technique stuff. But that's what glues my playing together and
mhm,
my heart as well, because there is simply not a note he wrote that isn't phenomenal. And as violinists, we're primarily diatonic players,
mhm, mhm,
and he's the guy. And then right next to that would be Mozart.
mhm.
And those two are so big to me. Everything else seems to fall off from there. Of course, I love lots of Puccini, and my mom was a singer, so Puccini. And my favorite piece of music, if you want to talk about a single most impactful piece of music, it would be Handel's Messiah. But then you're talking great singing, you're talking great Baroque writing, which,
Mhm.
of course, a lot of that reminds me of Bach. But what I really love about that piece, and I always loved it. Of course, when I was a kid, I played it all the time because if you're one of the only violinists in Central Florida, you're going to play a lot of Handel's
You are
Messiah.
playing some Handel. Yeah.
But what I really love is when I learned more about the circumstances under which Handel wrote that piece. It's a miracle. It's a miraculous piece of music.
Yeah, you
Mm.
can feel that when you listen to it. It is such a stirring piece of music.
It just feels like it's the perfect meld of things vocal and instrumental into one beautiful clattering, if you will.
Well, and I don't know how many times I've played it. I've played the full Messiah 4 times, which is 3.5 hours.
Yeah.
But what gets me about the piece is I never get tired
Mm.
of it. It never gets old. And the history of what was going on in Handel's life and what was going on in the part of the world where he grew up, where he lived, and then where he was transplanted. And, he was coming off of opera failures. He had
Yeah.
essentially lost his income, essentially.
Yeah.
And this was a kind of a last minute commission. And the whole thing and the amount of time he had to write it, there's no way to describe it otherwise. It's a
Mhm.
miracle.
Wow. Well, I'm enjoying this conversation about music so much, but I feel like we would be remiss if we didn't give you an opportunity to share with our listeners about a nonprofit you're involved in. Can you tell us about May Farm?
Oh, okay. Yeah. A little over 10 years ago, we lost a daughter. My daughter, Becky, was a wonderful person, and her career and her degrees were in special needs psychology. And she moved into working with autistic children at the Gower School here in Davidson County and had spent summers in her earlier part of her career at a camp in Black Mountain that was for autistic kids. And what we are doing, it took us a while to find a piece of property, but we are developing a place where autistic kids and young adults can make day trips to visit this farm and to experience farm life and animals and stuff like that. And it's just it was what was on her heart, and we made it what is in our heart in
Mhm.
honor of her and the incredible person she was. And that's what we're doing. Matter of fact, my wife lives out here, and my grandson lives here with his 2 children in another home. And we have about 30 acres to work with, and we're working on it. It's a little daunting, and it's harder, much harder than I thought,
Mhm.
but we're not going to worry about it. We're just going to keep moving, and can't wait to have our first. We're figuring it. We're between 5 and 10 children, 3 or 4 hours on a day. It's about an hour trip, so it's going to be an exciting outing for the kids, and they come, and of course they'll have lunch here and go around the place. We have a little trail through the woods. We have some forest, and we have a trail through the woods, and there's lots of safety issues, of course, and lots of things that we have to be aware of. And we had our first fundraiser this year, and that was great. And that's where I'm going to come in mostly is pulling on all of my artist friends that have indicated to me that they would like to help in any way they can. I will certainly take them up on it.
wow, this is so fascinating. I wish we had more time because
Oh,
you're,
okay.
you're you're talking to a former NARA certified equine therapy instructor.
Oh,
So
there you
it was
go.
it was part of my other life.
Yeah, that's great. Well, anyway,
Oh,
that's on our hearts, and that's what we're working towards. But and that's where I'm continuing to work. I'm 71, and I'm continuing to work just to have the capital to continue to build this, and it's going great.
so if somebody wants to donate or help you guys out, how do we do that? Like, where do we go?
PayPal at Becky D. Mayfarm. We do have people who donate regularly. We have not had a big push because we're not ready to receive kids yet.
Mhm.
We have lots of friends who do monthly, but we're not trying to do that yet.
Why don't we have you and your wife back on when you are ready to receive kids and we'll make a big
Yeah,
noise about it?
That would be more than awesome.
I'd love
Okay,
to
we'll
be
do
able
it.
to share it. Yeah.
That's kind of that's where what I'm pushing towards. Like my big push right now is to get to that opening day, and we're hoping
Mhm.
that within 2 years we'll be there. I think we will be. It's looking good.
I have
Uh,
one thing to say. I had no idea you were 71, and you, my friend, are a testimony to staying young by doing something you love and doing something
Mm,
with purpose.
well,
mm,
thank you. My mom passed away at 95, and my
nice.
dad's still alive at 96. So I figure this actually may be just the beginning of, of
Yeah.
a longer run, and so I'm trying to stay healthy, and I'm trying to keep my hands in shape. I'm a
Yeah.
violinist, athletic,
Yeah.
and so I have to keep that going. But
Well,
I'm also learning to take vacations. That's
well,
hard.
that's important. Balance is really important. Well, thank you so much for being with us today. And I'm excited to think that we're going to be able to have you back and talk more about May Farm and just have another chat with you.
Well, I love music for the soul. I love it.
Well, Music for the Soul definitely loves you. So if you've enjoyed the discussion today, please share it with a friend and give us a positive review on iTunes.
And please visit our website, musicforthesoul.org, where you can stream or download every song in our catalog, including I Miss You, the song David referenced today. You can read our lyrics, our healing music guide, our blog posts, and much more. Thank you so much for listening. God bless.
You were always there to talk about 1,000 things in life. School and friends and work and all the dreams I had inside. Now those memories don't register. There isn't much to say. If we talk at all, it's of some far-off, distant yesterday. I feel like you've been stolen by some thief. And anytime I'm with you now, all I feel is grief. I miss you, can't hold back the tears, like I've lost you, yet you're still here. It's a long goodbye that goes on and on and on. I miss you, and you're not even gone. I feel guilty when I don't enjoy the time I spend with you. I long for days that won't come back, the things we used to do. I know this isn't who you'd want to be. Could these days make me forget who you once were to I miss you. Can't lost you, yet you're still here. It's a